Good afternoon. This is so delightful in seeing so many fresh faces. This is really wonderful. Well, I hope you'll kind of continue with us in this in the series, especially to come to next week. David Axon, he's a star machine. So, first of all, I'd like to do a welcome to country. We respectfully acknowledge the traditional custodians of this land on which we are meeting, the Turrbal and Yagara peoples. It is a privilege to be standing on country. We pay our respects to their elders, past and present, grateful for their care and preservation of the land, sea, and communities. We also acknowledge the contributions of Aboriginal Australians for their faithfulness and energy given to the life of the Christian Church in our country. Last week we had Craig Gray, who spoke upon what's really required legally and socially and responsibilities in terms of getting our documentation in order for, and also for our carers too, in order to be able to have a sensible and safe exit of life. Next week we have David Axon, who's going to be talking about the emotional journey. So again, it's a journey we're already on the road of for all of us, and it will be wonderful to hear David's insights and understanding and wisdom in terms of how that journey kind of unfolds, so that when it happens, and as we further progress along those lines, we are not surprised, but hopefully rejoicing. This particular session, we're going to be celebrating it through Michelle Calabro. She has been with COASIT, which is what do we call COASIT? A service provider, okay, for about 15 years, and she's responsible for all the intake of staff and individuals in terms of supportive home care. She's also an educationalist, and she's been doing these presentations for many, many years, and she does around about 10 of these a year. And she's brought with her this wonderful sample bag. If you haven't got one of those, get one on the way out. Sorry, there are no chocolates in it. Adele, I'm sorry. Yeah, we'll try and make up for that in some other way. Michelle is a busy lady, and she is in support of her care for her father at the moment, and she has 2 children, and she's a single mum. And so we really want to thank you very much, Michelle, for coming to bless us. And we have one last thing, and that is question time. If you have any questions, and no doubt you're going to be loaded, can you please leave them till after you had a cup of tea and come back and respond, and we can respond to them. Probably points of clarification, okay, but no in-depth questions, because we are videoing this and we're putting it together as a series, and we like that kind of continuity. Incidentally, we won't be videoing the question time, because there's probably some personal things you want to share just in this particular group. So we won't be videoing that. But this session will be available online from our church, probably in about a week or so's time, as well as indeed the whole series is going to be videoed. So if you're going to miss one, you can always catch up. So come and bless us. Thank you, Michelle.
Great. Well, thank you very much for having me, and I look forward to presenting to you all today, and hope you have lots of questions. I'm sure you will. Now, there is going to be a little bit of an overload of information, because that's just how the system operates, unfortunately. But I'll try and keep it as simple as possible. And as Terry said later on, I'm happy to answer any questions and also meet with you in person at a later date if you want to get into more depth. So, COASIT Community Services. So our history. So We are an Italian-based organisation that help the migrants transition over. My grandparents were some of those people, my parents. Also, they were clients of Coasset, and we were formed mainly to help the Italians transition into the Australian community, help them find employment and housing, and help the children with education, but also teaching English to the migrants, and then promoting the Italian language to Australians. And we still have a Italian school that we operate for little babies, like kindy up to adult classes, and I attend those classes as well, just to brush up on my Italian. So yeah, no, it's a great company. Like Terry said, I've been with them for 15 years, done numerous roles. I actually started off doing the cleaning and shopping and showering for clients when I first started, and then worked my way up doing different courses, and here I am today. So, the first thing you should know, my aged care. Now, that's your number one point of contact if you ever need any assistance in the home. Without my aged care and having an assessment done by the assessment officer at my aged care, you can't access any services in the home. One thing I always say to everybody is, even if you don't need services now and you're over the age of 65, register with my aged care. Currently, if you call my aged care and ask them that you need assistance, whether it be cleaning, gardening, shopping, showering, whatever the service may be, it's about a 3-month wait until you get your first assessment. And that's generally just over the phone, and they'll ask you some questions, and then if they think that you require further assistance, it's another period of waiting. So this, unfortunately, the aged care system isn't a fast transition to when you can get your first service. It does take a number of months. Now, with the aged care, there's 2 programs that the majority of people access. The first one is called the Commonwealth Home Support Program. CHISP, you might have heard if you've ever been in contact with any providers, CHSP, CHISP. Now that's entry level into supported home. Now this program is funded by the government, and you've just got to think of the Commonwealth Home Support Program. Think of all the different service types you can access, whether it be cleaning, shopping, showering, physio. You've got to think each one of those services has its own bucket of money, right? And the government tips in maybe $1 million, $2 million into a bucket for cleaning, and a bucket for physio, a bucket for shopping. But that bucket of money of $2 million has to service maybe 5,000 people or more. Now, currently, the government hasn't been tipping in any funding into any of these buckets. So if you're currently looking, and you have been possibly for the last 6 months, you've been ringing different providers, could be Coasset, Blue Care, Anglicare, and you say, look, we've been given a code for cleaning, can you help us? And the provider will probably say to you, I'm sorry, we're at capacity, our portals are closed. That just means there is no more money in that bucket. So all we can do is service our existing clients, but we can't accept anybody new, because at the moment we're all waiting on the government to tip more money into these buckets. That's under the Commonwealth Home Support Program. So we're reliant on the government funding so we can help you guys a lot more. Now, the other program that was changed in November last year It used to be called home care packages, and you probably would have seen it on Four Corners and ABC. And the government decided to change the whole structure, whereas previously, from November the 1st and prior to that, if you were on a full pension, you were able to receive services in the home at no cost. So you could get your showering, your cleaning, your shopping, your gardening, and you didn't have to pay a cent. Then from November last year, the government decided that it didn't matter if you're on a full pension, a part pension, or self-funded retiree, everybody had to pay. So that new program went from home care packages to supported home. Again, to access both of those programs, the Commonwealth Home Support Program and supported home, you need an assessment by My Aged Care. Now, once you've had your assessment, you'll receive a whole heap of documentation in the mail, and that is basically your support plan. So what the assessment officer does is, it'll be a story of your background, where you were born, you know, what medical conditions you have, what you can and can't do, if someone's there that's caring for you, and then they'll approve you for different service types. Okay? This letter doesn't necessarily give you access to services immediately. So a lot of people might get a letter and it says, you have been approved for a supported home level 4. So you just guarantee that, yep, I can ring a provider, I've got my level 4 package, now I can access services. Unfortunately, it's an approval letter. Now you have to wait for the funding to be assigned, and that could take up to 1 year currently. Yep. So, once you do receive your approvals, it's always a good idea, if you are with a service provider, any letters that you receive from My Aged Care, give them a call, speak to somebody, because My Aged Care gives you so much information, it can be so confusing. I've had lots of clients that have received so many letters, one after another, that, you know, they've lost their way, and they were offered services, didn't realise because they got confused with other letters and they lost their funding. So it's imperative, just reach out to somebody, ask them, you know, to come out, have a read of the letter, see actually what's going on, what you can access at the time and what you're still waiting on. So as I said, the support plans basically give you a summary of your needs and what you want to achieve, whether it be, you know, physio for improved strength, mobility, whether you need assistance with personal care and those kind of services. It also explains to you what My Aged Care has approved you for, whether it be the Commonwealth Home Support Program, which is your entry level, and they can also approve you for a supported home package. So you can have approvals for both, all right? Generally, the supported home levels 1 through to 8 is for more, for clients that need a little bit more assistance. If you're generally just after the cleaning and maybe a bit of gardening, you'll generally find that My Aged Care will only give you approvals for the entry-level program, all right? Now, the government also split up participant types in November. Because there were so many people on the aged care system prior to the 1st of November that were on a home care package, now we're talking, they couldn't be, what's the government's words? A no worse off predicament, whereas they weren't paying anything out of their own pocket. So the government said from the 1st of November, those that were not paying anything out of their own pocket would continue not to pay. So then the government had to split all clients and all future people coming onto the system into 3 categories. So you had the grandfathered clients, and they were people that were assessed by My Aged Care and approved for services prior to the 12th of September 2024. Then anyone from the 12th of September 2024 to the 31st of October last year were classified as hybrid clients. Yeah. And then from the 1st of November, when the new system really started, they're classified as newbies. This is the government's wording, newbies. The reason why they've separated people into these 3 categories is all has to do with how much you contribute financially. And it's a way for all of the providers to distinguish whether you pay anything or you don't. Now, the other change that came with the Support at Home program is the government also split all the service types into 3 categories. So the first category is called clinical supports. So they're things like your nursing, podiatry, physio, dietetics, could be you need assistance with medication management. The government said if you accessed any of these services underneath a Support at Home package, you did not have to pay 1 cent. And it didn't matter if you were a full pensioner or a self-funded retiree. Everybody was entitled to have free clinical services. In saying that, somebody still has to pay for the physio to come out to your home, the podiatrist or the nurse. So even though you're not paying anything out of your own pocket for these services, your package of funding still has to pay for that staff member to come out. So this is where it wasn't quite made very clear to a lot of the public when they thought that they'd have a lot more funding left in their packages, but of course, you know, it goes pretty quickly with the hourly rates. The next category is independence. And they're things like your personal care, in-home respite, could be home modifications. And if you are a grandfathered client, you don't pay anything because you're on the old system. But if you're in the other 2 categories, you could pay anywhere from 5% of the hourly rate for a full pensioner up to 50%. 50% of the hourly rate. And anywhere in between, depending on your income. So income could be term deposits, shares, self-managed super funds. So all of these things come into effect. The last category, everyday living, which is of course the most popular. That includes your cleaning, your gardening, so the mowing, and meals. So you might want to order light and easy meals or gourmet meals delivered to your home. If you are on a full pension, the government says it's 17.5% of the hourly rate, up to 80% of the hourly rate if you're a self-funded retiree. When we're talking hourly rates, it's a little bit different to the Commonwealth Home Support Program, you know, the one with all the buckets, because that's subsidised by the government, where you might only pay $10 an hour for cleaning or $15 for a nurse to come out and see you. Under a Support at Home package, hourly rates vary from about $120 an hour up to $250 an hour. So you can see if the government's asking you to contribute 5%, 20%, up to 80%, it's a lot of money that's coming out of your pocket. Clinical supports, as you can see, no contributions for anybody. Independence, example the showering, ranges from 5% to 50%. Now, from the 1st of October this year, due to a lot of complaints that the Commissioner received, showering is, I still have it documented underneath independence. From the 1st of October this year, showering will actually come underneath clinical supports. Because what was happening was a lot of people were opting not to have showers because they couldn't afford it. So the government decided many months back that they'd make showering under clinical so people didn't have to make a financial contribution, but it doesn't come into effect till the 1st of October. We don't know why they've waited that many months to change it, but that's why I've still got it underneath that. And you can see everyday living, example like the cleaning and the percentages there, the 17.5% up to 80%. So, as I said, the grandfathered clients, which are ones that had approvals, clients that had approvals from 2024 and before, they don't pay anything if they're a full pensioner. It doesn't matter what services you access, you don't pay anything. So I guess they were the lucky ones that got into the system before the government decided to change it. Now, if you are a part pensioner, your contribution rates can vary. And the only way to establish how much you will have to contribute is by doing an income assessment with Department of Human Services, which is Centrelink. And there's an actual special application that you can complete, or if you receive a part pension, you can just ring, not the general number, there is a special number that you can call, and explain to them that, you know, you've received your home care package, your supported home package, and that you need to find out your contribution rates. Over the phone, they'll go through with you and ask you, do you still have this much in your bank account? Do you still have this and this? And they'll be able to tell you what your contribution rate is. With that contribution rate, then you contact a provider, and this happens every day to me. People ring me and say, look, I've received my level 5 package, my contribution rates are such and such, can you tell me how much I'm going to be out of pocket if I want to access cleaning, shopping, etc. And I can tell them to the cent how much they're going to be out of pocket. All right? Now, with the new clients that come on board under the new system, again, if you're on a full pension, the rate is 5% for independents and 17.5% of the hourly rate for everyday living services. That's just a straight given. But once you're a part pensioner or self-funded retiree, before you activate your package, please get your income assessment done. Because the moment you activate your package and you're not on a full pension, it takes about a month for the government and Centrelink and My Aged Care, they all talk in the background. They will do their own income assessment. It will be sent to the provider. And if your contribution rates are a lot higher than 5% and 17.5%, you will have to back pay what is owing from the day that you signed up. And that can be a lot of money. So I always say, do not activate any packages until you have your contribution rates in order and you actually have the letter stating your contribution rates. As I said, what's assessed? Your home is not part of the income assessment. I know that there's a lot of, Centrelink assessments where they take into account your home. When it comes to a supported home package, all they are interested in is your income. they take into account your aged pension, if you draw down monthly from your super fund, term deposits, shares, overseas pensions come into it as well. So any income producing streams is what they look at. Okay, rental income, that's another one. And they're just things that help the government decide how much you're going to contribute. Now, under the home care packages, currently there are 8 levels. Now, you can see on the screen behind me, I've got level 1 HCP in red, 2, 3 and 4. That's the old system where people were assessed for these home care packages prior to, 2024. It's a little bit confusing because we still have clients on the old system, but then we have a whole new clientele coming through on the new system. So hence I have to show the old and the new systems in place. You can see that the old level 1 HCP is about the same amount, 10,000, 11,000, let's call it, as the new level 1. The new level 2 is about at the moment it's about $4,000 short, because these figures are a little bit out of date because they increase every few months. The level 3 HCP in red used to be about $42,000. The new level 3 is only $21,000. So even though the government has increased, there only used to be 4 levels, now there's 8, but you can see how the funding has been stretched out now. The highest level that you can get your hands on is about $80,000 a year now, and I know it sounds like a lot of money, but in reality it isn't. Not when that money has to pay for services at $118 an hour or $250 an hour. That money has to last you a whole year. And this is why we budget all the funding. So my job is I go out, I budget people's money. So I do monthly budgets, I do quarterly budgets, I do annual budgets. So you might say to me, I want cleaning, shopping, in-home respite and nursing. I know that you might have a level 6 package, and then I do all the calculations and we see what actually fits into the funding, how much it's going to cost you, because you've got your contribution rates at hand if you're not a full pensioner, and then we make it last for the year. That doesn't mean you can't change your services. You might start off with just the cleaning and the shopping and the meals, but then you might have a fall, something might happen, and in 6 months' time you need nursing, you need physio, you need whatever it might be. Then your whole budget can change, because you can access any type of service underneath this program, but it's just the money that doesn't change. So we need to make it all fit in with the funding. But that is at the currently, give or take, a few $100s there, ranges from say $11,000 is the lowest funding amount up to $80,000. Of course, the higher the level, the more complex the needs. So yes, you can be reassessed. Say you were assessed initially and they gave you a level 1 because your needs were minimal back then. Something happens to you, your needs increase. You need to either contact your service provider and they can apply for you to have a reassessment, or you can contact My Aged Care directly, and you're basically going through that assessment process again. So you ring, you say your circumstances have changed. You may be waiting 6 to 8 weeks for the assessment to happen. I've seen it push through a lot quicker. Generally, if you're in hospital, they'll tend to come out pretty much straight away, only because we've got the social workers in the hospital that work and do the assessments. But if you're at home, you're still going to be waiting. So it doesn't matter whether you're new to the assessment or you're having a reassessment, it's not a fast process. But yes, you can jump from a level 1 up to a level 5 or even a level 8. But once you're reassessed for a new level, you still then have to wait for your funding to come through. Currently, because I have a pile on my desk about that many that I check each week for all these clients that are waiting for their higher levels, some of them I've been waiting 5-6 months and it still hasn't come through. Okay, so levels explained. So there are 8 classifications. So level 1, minimal supports. Level 2, you may require light personal care, some shopping, some cleaning. Level 3, moderate support. So you might need personal care a few times a week, cleaning, shopping, maybe transport to some medical appointments. Level 4, high frequency support. So, you might be having somebody come into your home 3 times a week. Level 5 is daily support, so usually Monday through to Friday. Level 6, 7 and 8, more complex care. So you might have somebody providing services to you 7 days a week. So for instance, my dad, even though he's in hospital at the moment, he gets nursing 7 days a week. Okay? And then he gets carers that come in 3 times a week to help with the cleaning and personal care and shopping, things like that. Now, besides the Commonwealth Home Support Program, which is the program where you have all your buckets that relate to each service type, and you're reliant on government funding being tipped into those buckets. Then you've got your levels 1 to 8 support at home packages. The government has also created some short-term pathways. They've created these pathways because they realise people are just waiting too long for having access to services because, look, there's just not enough government funding that's available. So what they've done is they've come up with a restorative care program. And some of you may have accessed this if you were in hospital and then you had 6 or 8 weeks intensive treatment once you got home. So you might have had the physios coming in and some nurses coming in, and they were only coming in maybe for 6 to 8 weeks. And that's called a restorative care program. And that's where the government used to give you $12,000 a year. Now they've reduced it to $6,000. We think it's just so they could push out more of these restorative care programs. So that's one pathway that you can access if you really need assistance when you come home. The other source of funding they've done is allowed government funding for assisted technology, which is another word for equipment, wheelie walkers, beds, wheelchairs, over toilet seats. They've called that assisted technology, and home modifications. So if you ever need any ramps put in, any rails, could be a bathroom modification. You've got the old bath and you want that knocked out. So the government's allowed, if you apply for it through My Aged Care, again, because everything goes through My Aged Care, they can grant you either $500, which I wouldn't bother because you can't get anything for $500, $2,000 or $15,000. So that's the government funding, and you can get that for the equipment, the assisted technology, and home modifications, which is good. So I've seen a lot of funding come through for assisted technology and home modifications in the last few months. So you can see that the government's trying to help people in their home with equipment and home modifications. And then the new pathway is end of life. So what they've done is if you're assessed to have less than 3 months to live, the actual My Aged Care assessment officers can grant you end of life funding. and that's $25,000 that can go towards all your services. As well as that, you can still have palliative care in place at home. So you would have your service provider and palliative care running side by side, providing services. Now that's only for 3 months. And this is where it gets a little bit tricky, because we've had some clients that had funding for end of life, but they survived past 3 months. So, unfortunately, they were on a level 8 package, which is the highest package, and then they went on to end of life funding. Once you activate end of life funding, you lose your level 8 package, because the expectation is you're not going to be here after that end of life funding. So what's happened with some of our clients is the $25,000 has been used in the 3 months, because that's how much time you have to use the money, is 3 months. We've had to then reapply to get their level 8 package back, and hope the government and the assessment officers give that person the level 8 funding again, so we can continue services. So this is the risk. So we're finding that some people won't activate their end of life funding if, the diagnosis is that they may survive past the 3 months. So restorative care program, you've got $6,000 and up to 16 weeks to use it. So that's where you get intensive services in the home, and that's generally after you've been in hospital. End of life is $25,000 and you've got 12 weeks to use it. It can be extended up to 16 weeks. But generally we find, because it's such intense services, most of the funding's been used within the 3 months, okay? And then you've got your 3 tiers of the assisted technology, which is your equipment, and your home modifications, where you've got $500, $2,000 and $15,000. And once the government says, here's your $15,000 to use on equipment or your home modifications, when you activate that $15,000, you've got 1 year to use the money. So you might need a wheelchair today once you've activated the funding, which might cost $1,000, and you've still got $14,000 left. You don't have to panic, because you've still got a whole year to use the rest of the funds, which is good. What is what? Because there's so many different programs. So residential aged care is permanent care, a nursing home, where you live there full time. Residential respite care, that's where you may have been in hospital, you might live by yourself, you're not well enough to go home to look after yourself, so you might go into respite care for 2 weeks, 3 weeks, 4 weeks until you build up your strength, and then you come back home. So a lot of people get confused with the two. The Commonwealth Home Support Program, that's the program with the buckets of money, where you've got a bucket of money for cleaning and shopping. And it doesn't matter whether you're a full pensioner or a self-funded retiree, on that program everybody pays the same. Look, the current rate at the moment for cleaning is about $10 or $12 an hour. But that's where you're reliant on the government tipping in money, and at the moment no providers can help anyone because no one's got any money in those buckets. All right, so that's called the Commonwealth Home Support Program. And then you've got support at home, which is your levels 1 to 8. That's the program that's income assessed. So imperative that if you're not on a full pension, if you're ever granted a level 1 through to 8, that you get your income assessment done before you sign an agreement with a provider. Because if your contribution rates come back a lot higher, remember you have to back pay from the day that you signed up with that provider. And then you've got transitional care program, which is that program like your end of life, you come back and you have restorative care. So these are all transitional programs. So support at home funding. So we used to be able to do a lot more with the funding than what we can now. So one example is we used to be able to do spring cleaning, which was really popular. And it didn't matter if you had like a 2-storey home, like windows cleaned in and out, eaves, oven cleans, a lot of things that we were able to do. And now the government's really cracked down on what providers can provide to you. And the way that they're keeping control of that is with all the service types, they've separated them into codes. And when we provide a service, because the provider pays for anything that we do for our clients initially, and then at the end of the month, we claim what we've spent on you to get our money back. But we have to put in codes. And if these codes are not approved by the department, then the provider doesn't get paid back. So we have to be really strict now of what services we can give you. Otherwise we lose money. And that's why a lot of providers, since this new system has started, have closed their doors because, we're not able to provide a lot of services. But things that we can't use the money on, so everyday expenses like rent, groceries or utility bills, social activities like, joining a gym, clubs, things like that, entertainment and lifestyle extras, club memberships and holidays, that was the big one. So a lot of people thought they could use their funding to get a carer to take them on holidays. Major home renovations, so for your kitchen, so bathrooms can be done because that could be a risk, but no kitchen renovations, things like that. And medical procedures. So a lot of people also think, what about medications? So we can't cover medications because that's underneath the medical benefits scheme. So medication still is the client's responsibility. Underneath the Commonwealth Home Support Program, which is the one with all the buckets, like I said, it doesn't matter if you're a full pensioner or self-funded retiree, everybody pays a small contribution, might be $10 an hour, because the government's tipping in the rest of the money. And you can dip in and out of different services if you have the approvals for that service type. CHISP services, look, basically you can access the same services under both programs, your general cleaning and things. But if you don't want to wait for your government funding to come through, let's just say you're a self-funded retiree and it's not going to be worthwhile you taking on a level 1 through to 8 because it's just going to be too much money for you to pay. A lot of clients actually opt for private services where the hourly rate might be $60 an hour instead of $118 an hour. So a lot of clients do that. And that is it. And thank you very much.
Thank you. Look, it's time to recaffeinate, and we will return in about a quarter of an hour. And with question times, no doubt you've got an awful lot of them. I certainly have. Okay, let's take a break. Thank you.